Okay, so I actually haven't looked at the blog post. I only heard that it's gonna be no tire wear, fuel, or whatever. I've been looking forward to it for so long, and everyone I hear about the game makes me want even more sad. Dude, you and me both. Like, I loved Project Cars 2. That's the one that got me into sim racing, like, hardcore. Slightly Mad Studios, they're like, we got the new Corvette, guys. That means we're a sim. Like, dude, no. You're obviously not. Yes, Project Cars 3, from a game design viewpoint, is focused more on the driver than the previous two games. What? With this new installment, they spelled installment wrong, pretty sure. The direction was to laser in on what makes motorsport evoke so much passion. And those of us who love the sport, the cars, the driving, the racing, the speed, were really narrowed down on those things with Project Cars 3. The speed. Principal physics programmer. Project Cars 3 is both new and traditional, if I can call it that. The details handling motorsport and the freedom of choice, the weather, so on, that is what our long-term fans want. No, it's not, and that's all there. Though we've gone in and improved on all of that. David, you're not giving us what fans want. My freaking guy. As in the real world, drivers drive. Wow. You really hit the nail on the head on that one. Drivers do drive. Water is wet. Mechanics of the team worry about the minute details, and that's what we wanted to aim for with Project Cars 3. In the end, it doesn't matter what series it is, an amateur weekend or a track day. The top echelon of motorsport, where 300 engineers and science degrees are poring over reams of data. Pretty sure they did that anyway, right? Drivers are there to drive, and that's really what we wanted to highlight with this new game. We wanted to bring a renewed focus on the driver and the racing. So now you don't spend hours in a practice session working out tire life and the set of tires, but that's part of the fun. Developing your own setup is part of the fun. That's like insinuating that setups aren't gonna be a thing. Everything's gonna be like a fixed setup is what they're trying to like insinuate here. And you don't need to do maths on how many liters of fuel you need to finish the race, and you might be punished for picking the wrong strategy. They're just trying to hold everyone's hand. Holy hell, this is bad. All the good dynamic tire heating maths is still going in. Is it? And in many cases improved just without the potential to overheat in the long term. That's poopy. All the dynamic situation to situation stuff is still here. But now if you want to go sliding around an entire race, you can. Why? That's actually a good example. The thermal model in layers above that does still happen as it did in Project Cars 2. The core temperature is locked, but the rubber contacting the road is still fully modeled for all heat effects. Okay. To make it a little easier to understand, tires aren't part of what suits the weather. So there's no wet tires in the game. There's no wet tires? Codemasters turned Project Cars 2 into grid since they bought it. Yeah. That's terrible. Well, I mean, to be fair, Codemasters bought it, what, 6 months ago? 7 months ago? I don't think Codemasters had anything to do with this, based on how long this has been in development. But fuck me. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm getting. No wet tires is when they say tires aren't part of what suits the weather situation. That's what I'm getting from that, is that there's gonna be no wet tires because it doesn't matter. Because they're now, how much performance do we want? Like, no, that's not how it works. Within most real-world racing series, hard and soft tires are meant to be alternatives to each other, depending on the temperature, track type, and strategy. But from one racing series to another, there exist differences in outright performance. A cheaper slick used in a regional series is usually worse than what a national GT3 series would use. GTE prototype slicks can be 2 seconds a lot faster than GT3 tires. And the rubber compound... By the way, this is all one sentence. And the rubber compounds used for Formula 1 are even faster than that. Obviously, because they have to handle different loads. Obviously, they're going to be faster. The core temperature of the tire is locked to the optimum value. What you'd want to heat the tires up to in Project Cars 2, but all of the layers from there forward outside are fully dynamic. They're just trying to throw a bunch of like useless jargon at you so you get confused and have no idea what's actually happening. The tires being locked at ideal temperature and constant pressure means the tire pressure setup is simpler as well. So comparing to Project Cars 2, the only difference is that we reset the core tread temperature to an ideal set point at the start of each physics tick. Tick? And we do this to avoid penalizing drivers who don't have endless hours to assess their tire wear before races. Do you not see how many hours I spend getting tire pressures and temps set up for a race around ACC? I'll spend 5 minutes, 2 laps, 3 laps, maybe 5 laps at the most setting up tire pressures, which is probably actually a bad thing. Setting up tire pressures for an hour-long sprint race? What do you mean setting up hours? In the real world, teams come to race weekends already armed with all that data because they've gone through it in the sim. They've gone through it in the sim, right? I would assume. So rather than where it's really the tire heating where most of the magic happens, handling dynamics wise, no. The tire discussion is a really good reference point to how Project Cars 3 differs. That is a very good point into giving us a sense of direction on where this game is going. Especially considering we've only seen GT3 and road cars. They automatically switch to wet tire. Oh, okay. I thought there was like a slider, you know what I mean? Where it's like, we want this performance to this performance, you know what I mean? Of course, you still have access to your setups though. Aero, brake tuning, weight distribution, ride heights, alignment, springs, dampers, gearing, and differential, as well as tire pressures are all there. I thought tire pressures didn't matter. Huh, juicy? Huh? But we've made the options a little easier to engage and digest. We know that in Project Cars 2, the differentials were extremely complicated. I think you mean the suspension. There were 4 different kinds of differential, plus a spool that doesn't allow for any differential. At least 7 to 8 settings, and then all of that potentially for rear, center, and front diffs separately, depending on the car. For Project Cars 3, we thought about what a driver would ask for their engineer. Preload, XL, lock, decel, lock. Oh, acceleration lock, and okay. The complex differential modeling is still there in the background, but the player has an easier time dealing with it through the new interface. Wasn't there an engineer part in Project Cars 2 also? Like, you could just ask the engineer what you want differently. You could just, like, use his suggestions. So yes, if you want to get out on track on a cold morning at Spa, just go drive and tinker with your setup. That's obviously still there. And actually, if you do, you'll notice the driving physics have been improved. We really nailed over the limit feel. Over the limit feel means you spin, by the way. The key to this is driver journey. The upgrades, the racing, the feel of the cars from the driver's seat, making the driving fun and the visceral enjoyment of driving a car at speed. That sort of echoes the emotional connection we'll get from motorsport. A tear is flowing from my eyelids. By removing tire wear, fuel usage, we could in turn remove pit stops. Okay, we already read this. Though none of that means we've simplified the tire model. Dude, yes it does. You remove tire life. Is that not simplified? It's all happening under the hood. Okay, that's a shit pun. Overall, this change has kept the focus on the racing and less on engineering tactics. Engineering tactics has to do with racing. That's part of racing, right? It makes racing fairer. It makes racing fair. It makes racing fair. It's all about fairness now, guys. I'm done. I'm done. If it's not fair, we don't want it. Racing needs to be fair. It's about what you do behind the wheel that counts, and as a driver, it makes the experience a lot closer to what you get in the real world. How is this at all closer to the real world than what Project Cars 2 was? And how was Project Cars 2 close to the real world? I think they're still calling it a simulation too. I'm done with this, man. That's the first time I actually read through it. I was kind of hoping to look forward to it, but Big sad.